Today on Ham Radio Q&A, is a Baofeng a good radio choice for when the stuff hits the fan? Well, I'll give you my thoughts on this topic, so please keep watching for more. Hi, I'm Michael, KB9VBR, your host for Ham Radio Q&A. I'm on a mission to inspire and educate the amateur radio community, so if this is your first time watching, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Well, in the comments of my videos, I often see people asking about radios for SHTF or, stuff hits the fans or a grid down type event. This could be a great concern to many preparing for disaster situations. And I would agree that communications should be an essential part of anyone's emergency plan. When a local disaster strikes, the first thing that's going to happen is that communications like cellular systems or maybe even the internet on a temporary basis will be overloaded. Having a two-way radio and the ability to use it may be vital for your survival. On that point, many also believe that the expensive Chinese radios, like this Baofeng here, are sufficient for emergency or disaster communications. But in reality, these radios are poorly suited for the task, and really they're going to fall down when it comes to their use in a disaster situation. So here's what I believe are 3 reasons why a Baofeng handheld doesn't make a good SHTF radio. First off is their cheap build quality and spectral impurity. Now with these radios, you really get what you pay for. With a retail price of under $30, and I've seen these things go as low as $22, you need to ask yourself, why are they so cheap? Well, the first thing that goes out the window is certainly quality control. Fit and finish is nothing special, and some of the units might even be dead on arrival. You never know. But even if you do get a good one, you need to ask yourself, how long will it last, and will the radio be ready for me when I need it the most? Now, don't get me wrong. These radios, their low cost is greatly the result of highly integrated software-defined radio technology, and they use direct conversion to receive their signals. That level of sophistication can make for a very inexpensive product, but direct conversion still requires filtering and other circuitry, and these radios are they're missing it, so they have really poor capabilities when it comes to receiving, especially if you're in a area where there's a heavy RF environment or strong adjacent signals, say like, in an urban setting or something like that. Plus their lack of filtering and quality control makes them spectrally impure on the transmit, putting out harmonics and spurs all up and down the VHF band. Just to make the point, the ARRL published an article in the January 2020 issue of QST magazine, where they updated their testing of handheld radios at the last year's Dayton Hamvention. And what they found out is 78% of Baofeng handhelds tested during the event were found to be non-compliant for spectral emissions. The tested radios were all found in the wild. These were participants at Hamvention. So it was, it was a pseudo-random sample. But to kind of put things into perspective, every other model of radio they tested, like the majors like Yaesu, Kenwood, ICOM, Alinco, and even some of the Chinese models like TYT, Osheng, and Anytone, they were all 100% compliant. It was just the Baofeng radios that were bad. This goes to show that the quality control is not a concern when it comes to the production of these little handheld radios. Next is their ability for out-of-band transmit. Yes, Baofeng handhelds can transmit out-of-band, and I hear that as a frequent reason why they should be part of your stuff hits the fan kit. But, I believe this is more of a liability than an asset, as my question to you is, what are you going to transmit on outside of the amateur radio bands? Police and fire? Well, I suppose you could, but it wouldn't do you much good. Many communities are moving to digital P25 operation for their public safety radios, and law enforcement is even frequently using encrypted transmissions for their radio systems, so they're never going to hear you. These handhelds can't do P25 digital, and they're really totally useless in that regard. Even if your community still is using analog, the Baofeng's, their scan rate is so slow, and their susceptibility to RF noise causes them to lock up onto any channel that has some kind of stray signal on it, which makes it really aggravating to use as a scanner. I suppose it could be used as an MURS or GMRS radio, although they aren't type accepted for those radio services, so they're not recommended for that either. But really, in a disaster situation, are there going to be people monitoring the MURS or the GMRS frequencies in a grid down type situation? Third up is their low power and their poor range. This point actually pertains to just about every handheld radio, not just the Baofengs. On their own, they have a low power output and a limited range. With a handheld, you're really only going to get about 1 to 2 miles of expected range or distance. And it's going to be even less if you're in say a wooded situation or in an urban environment. Handheld radios excel in communications when they are a part of a larger network or repeater system that can extend their range or distance, several tens of miles. But when the stuff hits the fans, you should also anticipate that the repeaters may be down too. So, these handhelds are only going to be useful for short distance and point-to-point type communications. If the other people in your party are all within 1 mile, then a handheld, might be good enough to keep everybody together and in touch. But if you're expecting communications over any credible amount of distance, you're going to need to look elsewhere. So what's a better solution? Well, I think that for a true grid down scenario, one where essential communications are disrupted, the handheld radio will do you little to no good at all. Sure, you can use them to coordinate with your family members over a short distance, like maybe a mile or so. But beyond that, its utility is really suspect. I believe that you're wanting a true disaster scenario communications, you're going to need to look at the HF spectrum and select a radio that will give you a good medium to long range communications. That means, something like a compact HF radio and a portable antenna system that allows you to quickly set up and use it in an NVIS type configuration. NVIS, or near vertical skywave propagation, works by setting up an HF antenna at a low enough height so that more of the signal is radiated upwards, with the goal of the signal bouncing off the ionosphere and covering a 100 to 300 mile range. This is a great method for local and regional communications, as you can cover, say, an entire state with an NVIS type antenna. I've got a video that demonstrates NVIS, so I'll pop that up here in the corner if you want to kind of check that one out. But in order to use NVIS, you're also going to need to be on the HF bands, and most notably, 40 or 80 meters. So you'll want to consider a portable HF transceiver, or maybe an older HF radio that you can pack up and, take into the field. I use the Asus FT891 as my portable rig, as it's relatively small and has, as many of the modern conveniences that I've come to appreciate in today's HF radios. And then the third item in your SHTF communications kit will be power. And notably, battery power and a method of recharging it. Lithium iron phosphate batteries, they're great because they're lightweight and a very high power density. But you could also use, say a 12 volt AGM battery, or even car batteries for that matter if you're in a pinch. HF equipment all runs on a 12 volt system, so your vehicle can be used as a charging source. Otherwise, get some solar panels, as they make a great passive method of keeping your equipment charged when there is no other power available. All of this equipment is certainly a lot more expensive than a $25 handheld radio, but it's also going to be a lot more capable too. Also, the knowledge that, with the gear I have packed up, say into 2 medium-sized packs, gives me the ability to make contacts anywhere to almost anyone, is reassuring, for when a disaster strikes. As I always say, the goal of disaster communications is to get your message out of the affected area so that it can be handled by a more conventional means. Now, I know that a lot of people are still going to buy these cheap handhelds and make them part of their disaster kit. Like anything else that's cached away for the zombie apocalypse. They'll put the radios aside and not consider any type of training or communications planning. Maybe in the long run, that's a good thing, as when the disaster strikes, they'll grab that handheld and, turn it on, possibly the battery's dead, or, maybe they'll get on to some random frequency, start transmitting, and the radio's low power and inability to really communicate will, make them unable to get their message out. But really, my point being is that emergency and disaster communications takes planning and practice. You need to know your radio's capabilities, and you need to be able to use your equipment in the field so that you know what to expect. Letting it sit dormant will do nothing at all to prepare you for communications systems are disrupted. And that's the reason why I really like portable operation. Getting out in the field and using your equipment portable, setting up your antenna, making those contacts really helps you train and prepare for when you need to use your radio equipment in an actual disaster type situation. So, do you agree or disagree? Let me know. And also, what do you think is the ideal stuff hits the fan radio? Please leave that in the comments below. I'll filter through them and, keep that conversation going. Maybe even one or two of your questions will show up on my next Your Questions Answered video. But for more articles and information, be sure to check out my blog, where there's lots of information about disaster and emergency communications over there at www.jpole-antenna.com. Your support of this channel drives the production of future videos, so if you like this video, give me that big thumbs up. I appreciate that. Check out some of my recommended videos alongside here. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Pressing subscribe and the little bell notification will inform you when future videos are released. Well, that's it for this time. I'm Michael, KB9VBR. Have a great day and 73.